Greetings and welcome to the AutoEnter Live presentation about creating a native FileMaker audit trail. I'm Taylor Sharp with TMS Software. Quick about me here, I'm a full-time FileMaker developer and have been since 2013, currently certified and back to version 12, with BS in Chemical Engineering, a couple of decades experience with the U.S. government. I'm currently the FileMaker Pro User Group Dallas Chapter Coordinator along with Greg Price. I'm the president of TMS Software and the primary developer there. I'm an electric unicycle rider and snowboarder, follower of Christ, and live in Dallas with two dogs, Lily and Sarah. The overview is we're creating a native FileMaker audit trail. So what tools do we have in FileMaker to do auditing, document the deletes, and record the histories? That is what we're going to look at today. And we're going to look at our current TMS software solution that does this, called version 4.4 that we have recently updated. To understand what we're doing, we're going to be talking about creating an audit log, which is essentially a record of events and changes, and typically these capture events by recording who performed an activity, what activity is performed, and how the system responded. Since we're working with a database audit log, the database log track the changes when data and records and fields are changed and modified or deleted. Now a database log may do some other additional information that like FileMaker Server does, for example, for access events to record things such as schedule scripts or backups. Why do we want to do this? Why would we have this audit system? Well, to prevent fraud or to investigate a fraud. So, however, most of the time audit logs are used to find out when mistakes or improper training has caused users to incorrectly change or delete data. So you can address why and how things happen so that people don't continue to make those mistakes. Audit logs provide documentation to explain what has happened on a database when users may claim to the contrary. For example, if users claim records are disappearing, logs can prove whether or not those records were ever created and or deleted, and if so, who deleted it and how it happened. So it's also a valuable feature for selling the solution. A lot of decision makers like to find it very valuable to be able to know exactly what has happened and why. So relational database management system auditings are at various levels of tracking changes, additions, and deletions of records, identifying the information, not only the change, but what account made the change, what computer, and when. Some include a method of rolling back the data to an earlier state for that record or the whole table. If you go over to the Claris marketplace, there are a couple of commercial solutions out there. One's the Audit Add-on, and others FM Audit Log Pro 2.0 and Elemental Log. I'm not familiar with those solutions, but as commercial solutions, they probably have some additional features that are above and beyond what this free open source solution is from TMS Software. Caveats: audit logging inherently reduces performance. So anytime you're doing audit logging, you add CPU compute, so nothing is going to ever improve performance-wise when you start adding audit logging. Audit logging also takes up storage, so if you're going to be recording all the changes, that means your database or the amount of storage needed to record things is going to grow. So unlike enterprise level SQL database engines like Microsoft SQL Server and Oracle, FileMaker is not designed with built-in audit logging of record field level changes. FileMaker Server does record other things such as events and access, but it does not do things at the record field level. FileMaker has the tools to perform various levels of auditing at the client level, identifying when records change or what fields are changed and who made those changes. So note that anyone with full access can make changes to get around the auditing, so this is not bulletproof. If you're giving out full access privileges to staff that probably should not have access to it, you want to make sure the full access only is used by developers and not staff at the company. There may also be some circumstances when you may not want to log changes. There might be some batch fields that are doing some nightly storage of information that is updated each night that you don't want to actually record every change for every day. Whatever the reason is, you might not want to log all changes. There are some options here to avoid doing some of those auditing where you don't want those things recorded. But ideally, audit logging would be stored in a separate log file instead of inside the database, but this solution here doesn't do that. It does store it in the FileMaker database. Maybe if you used a plugin, you could write it out to a single file somewhere else, but that is not something we have here. This is probably something that would be on a nice little wish list for Claris for down the road on FileMaker. It'd be nice if they would include this auditing as a built-in feature to FileMaker server. So hint, hint, Claris. So regarding FileMaker deletes, we need users to be able to delete records, but to be safe, you have to control who can delete what information, and you do that with security privileges. Do not do it with the user interface. Do not control it with scripting. You make sure you control deletes with the security privileges. But even if staff are allowed to delete, you want to be able to track what is being deleted and by whom, and sometimes it would be useful to be able to roll back by pulling previous data states into the current database. So to manage deletes, make sure all privilege sets except the full access developers privilege set do not allow records to be deleted in any tables. All deletes are to be controlled by scripting. The scripting will then store the deleted records in a single deletes table, and with that deleted record for each entry where the deleted data is saved, that information is actually going to be stored in a JSON format since FileMaker supports JSON so well. Little note of warning, deleting container fields does not easily lend itself to JSON because container fields are binary 8-bit, and the rest of the data that FileMaker works with is text and numbers, or generally ASCII 7-bit. So you can either convert the 8-bit to 7-bit for JSON with a base 64 encode, or you can create a separate table for deleting container fields, which is what the default is in this particular solution. So when you want to delete things, there's going to be a delete script that you're going to run. So here's the script that runs. And when you call that script, you're going to probably be assigning it to, say, a button here. So here's an example of a delete button. And you're going to have to pass the information in that delete button about what you want deleted. In this case here, we're going to need to set in JSON in the script parameter what we need to be deleted. We need to identify what is the table occurrence that we're going to do this delete. What is the key field, the primary key field that is going to be deleted? What is that key field's value? It needs to be a unique value. You also can include the option for no prompting. So if you want to delete silently, where you just hit delete and it deletes right away, then you change this to true. But in general, most of the time when you hit delete, you want a prompt to come up and say, do you really want to delete this? And if you leave it like this, it will prompt you for the client or the user to make that decision. Lastly, there's an option for commit before deleting. This was necessary for deleting in portal rows, so in general you just leave that alone and copy that in. But here's the sample script parameter that you would include with a button right over here, and then be able to run the delete, and then it would delete and record what was deleted. So for the default audit fields, if you're familiar with creating new tables in FileMaker, here's the default fields that FileMaker creates, which are useful. I create a separate set of default fields, and the ones I create are the timestamp created, the count by the host, the universal time coordinate, which is more important than the regular timestamp if you have clients that are across multiple time zones. The history field is actually where the JSON is stored, so that's a required field, and here's the modified is the same thing as the created fields. So to make this work, you're going to need, there are three functions that drive this whole particular solution. One is the get modified fields function, and the next is the modification timestamp, and then the creation timestamp. These last two right here are the triggers that cause a custom function to run that records what changes were made. So keep in mind, if you do anything that does not trigger either the modification timestamp or the creation timestamp, no record is going to be recorded as being changed. So these three things are important to make sure are always happening for histories to be recorded. And so that audit field, which I call syshistory, must be put in each table and the primary key identified when you're doing the audit. It needs to be triggered when a record is created or modified. So those were those created and modified fields we talked about. And it needs to track who performed the action and the information about, what changes were made. So not only, who performed it, but what did they actually change. There are a couple of unsupported functions that do not trigger the creation timestamp or the modification timestamp, and they are the replace and the import functions. Import, there isn't really any way to get around things, but what I do for most of my solutions is I remove the replace function from the menus that the staff and users see, and I replace that with a script that they can called replace. So here's a script called replace right here that's included in the solution. And this replace script will just run a loop through that does all the replace that whatever you're wanting to replace, and by using a loop it triggers all the modification timestamps, which then therefore trigger the history to be updated. So I get rid of the menu choice for replace, and while you're in the menu thing you might also remove the delete one too, because you really don't want delete or replace to be up in the toolbar. So you create custom toolbars without either of those and you'll be good to go. So to do this, the syshistory field has a custom function that we have written, and to call the custom function, the syshistory field is going to have this particular custom function right here called TMS history, and here are the options that go with it. You have to provide the primary key field. Schema global field is no longer needed anymore before version 19.4.1 when we got the base table names. So that's kind of going away, but you can just leave it blank here for now if you've got the current version of 19.4 or 19.5. Modification timestamp field has to be included, so what is triggering the history to be written, so it forces that to happen. We need the history field. What is, we're calling it syshistory is what I call it, but you could call it something else, but you need to identify what that field is. If there are any fields that you do not want to record the history on, you provide the list of those fields. And then lastly, the max number of saves. So if you want to record the last 10 saves, you can say put a 10 in there, or the last 100 saves, or the last 1,000 saves. If you put a 0 in there, it will save all saves. It'll do a history of everything. So if you just want to keep track of everything that's been changed, set it to 0, and it'll record everything that all saves that are made. So if you want to see what the custom function looks like, you can go up to custom functions and look at it, but here is a paste of the custom function. We obviously don't have time to go through this rather lengthy custom function, but this is what is running the particular custom function to record the histories. In addition to the TMS history custom function, there are a couple of user interface functions. So what I'm going to do is go back here and say, remember, if we do the history, we get a full custom function that gets returned, and here's an example of a full, looking at the JSON of everything that's keeping track of changes right here. And so in between each of these brackets, here's one set of changes right here where the admin on a Mac with FileMaker version 19.3.2 modified on this layout fields test field 1 and test field 2, change them from 4 to 4 and to 3. And it even identifies if you were running a script, what script was running when you did it. And so this tracks everything that was changed at a given time. If you want to, for example, here test fields was changed to 6. If you want to find out what the previous version is, you have to go back and look for test field above in the previous history. And here's an example, test field 5 test field was previously a 5. So if you want to know what it was changed from and to, you can say here's what it's changed to, and here's what it's changed from, if you want to figure out the difference between them. So you have to track back previously to find out what the previous data was, and that's how you can do a rollback script if you need to do that. Now this gives all of the information right here. This is the full JSON. Sometimes, a lot of times what my clients want to see is a more abbreviated version of the JSON that just shows the data that was changed, who changed it, and the timestamp. And so this is a custom function that just shows the medium, and then there's a real brief one that shows what changes were made at what timestamp, the admin, and by who, and it also looks at related tables too. So if you look at it at invoice and invoice lines, it would be able to incorporate both of those together to see when any changes were made. And so that's where we were talking about these other custom functions. TMS short, this is the history short, shows the shortened version, and TMS history one line right here are the other custom functions that you get in this template. So the scripts that we include are do not log history script. So if you run this do not log history script, it will give you a choice to, here we'll just run it. It'll say, do you want to run it or not? If you give it a 1, it'll not make any changes. That means do not log histories for this particular client. It's not turning it off for the whole file, only for this particular client. Or you can run the script again, and if I remove the 1, then now it's back to it'll record any changes we make right now. So that may be useful usually within other scripts where you're wanting to say do not log a history. You can turn it off and on via that script. Of course, we have the delete record script that we've already gone over, and then the replace script that replaces the replace function, so that doesn't trigger our history, so with a looping script that does do that. So those are the scripts that are available there, and everything that we have gone over here today is available in our web page. So if you come to the TMS software web page, you go to tms.us, and if you come down here to TMS templates and click on it, this will give you all of the templates we have here. This top template is the one that we're working on, is the audit and deletes script that you can download. This you can download it in your web page. We also have a number of other templates out there if you might find any of those useful. These are all free and open source ones that TMS software provides to the FileMaker community. So I want to thank all of you for being here. I'm Taylor Sharp, and I'm hoping that you guys can maybe look at ways to do a better job of integrating histories and audits so that you can improve your customers' experience using this template. And obviously, if you have any feedbacks, you can send them to us, and we will see if it's something we can improve on what we have here. And we appreciate all of you being here at AutoEnter Live to hear more about this scripting. And this ends our recording. Take care.